And you're on.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Busybird Publishing for our Wednesday Live. My name is Blaise and Les.
I'm Les.
And I'm Colleen.
So Colleen is hanging out with us today because Colleen has done a number of books with us. Do you want to tell us a bit about the books that you have there?
Yes, well, will I hold them up? Well, this is the first of my books, and of course they've all been done by Busybird. And each of my books is about a character called Curly. So
all the books are connected?
They are.
Yeah.
They've all got the character thread running through them. And this is the second, the Curly collection and the Curly conclusion. And
I'll hold that one. So they're a collection of short stories, aren't they? Or are they
no. This one is a novel.
Yeah.
This one is basically short stories, but it does follow into a story as such. Yes.
Great.
And this one is a children's book, but a lot of adults are reading it at the moment and enjoying it. So this is called The Mystery of the Hourglass.
And does Curly appear in that book?
Curly does appear in that book as
so
well.
they're all connected in a way.
Yes.
Now,
there's also four. Sorry.
It's a shared universe.
Yes.
That's the stories.
And there's also for school children.
what age group is this one for?
Well, I've said about 9 plus, and but I think, as I say, Les could read it quite happily.
Yes.
And I think he enjoyed
Me?
it. Yes.
I enjoy anything.
So Colleen actually came to us last year with the text for this and had a very particular idea of what she wanted in terms of the physical look of the book.
Certainly did.
And this is actually got a dust jacket. So the book itself is, plain colour with the title on the spine. But there's also a lot of design elements inside the book. So there are some different design elements in terms of the title pages and illustrations that you've done yourself. In fact, all of the books have illustrations that you have done.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
So what is really nice about this is actually, and which is why I love real books,
Yes.
is that it's a reading experience.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what you were after.
I was, most definitely. And I'd have to say that I certainly, it exceeded all my expectations, as
Yes.
you know. I'm really pleased with the book and the input by everybody in the team here, and particularly Les, and also
So Les did the layout.
Les did the layout, which was
Exclusively.
Not exclusively.
So Les, when it came to the design of this,
Yes.
how did you find it different from a lot of the books that you have done?
Well, this one had a lot more. Well, firstly, not to disparage any authors, Colleen had a really clear vision of what she wanted, which was
Which is
a trend.
really actually good.
Which is
for
great
us,
because then it's
sometimes
very easy
people
to
go,
realise
like,
that.
a lot of people say to us, I don't know what I want, and so we
Yes.
do something, and go, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
We're like, okay.
Well, they say this is what I want. You go, here it is. No, that's probably not quite right. So we try something else. So Colleen had a really clear idea of what she wanted in terms of the trim and images. You can actually flick onto one, which
So
she labelled to appear in.
you can't find one, it's always
Which she labelled to appear next to certain text.
Yes.
So it was actually really easy. The difficult thing at the start was putting it all together. But then once it was together, it really flowed. And it was actually nice to work on something that had an aesthetic beauty to it that transcended what a standard book is. And there's nothing wrong with standard books, but I'm saying, well, this is sort of more boutique layout.
And this is actually a print-on-demand book, which means that you can actually print one at a time if you want to.
Yep.
And I think the quality has come out, is really great. Because I was worried about things like the black, so in the
Yes.
pages, but it's
Yes.
actually come up, as you can see, it's actually come up really well. Now,
Yes.
if you were to print hardcover books with a dust jacket through a bulk printer, nothing, obviously that's great, but you're going to have to get 1,000 books to actually make it worthwhile.
Yes.
Whereas with print on demand, you can just get one at a time, which is fantastic.
Yes, I think so.
And you had your launch in December,
December.
and you pretty much have sold most of your books, haven't you?
Well,
Quite a few of them.
I sold quite a lot of books, but I've also put it in the school because this is what brought the book about.
Yeah.
So apparently they're going to read it to the children as a serial novel.
Oh, cool.
Great.
And so I'm hoping that I can get it out to some more schools.
That would be great.
Yes.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yeah. In terms of, because of these are adult books,
Yes.
in terms of writing a book for children, how did you make that transition? Did you find it much different?
I didn't really, because I'm in my senior years, if you like. I'm not quite familiar with what young kids like now,
Yeah.
so that worried me a bit. And I think that that book might be totally different from what they normally read. But I'm hoping because it is different,
That they
they might actually enjoy that
Yeah.
for a change. Because I think a lot of the books I've seen, they're pretty much the same now.
Yeah.
Mm.
And from what I've heard from you, you've had some good feedback from some
I have.
young kids reading it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of good feedback from adults actually. So I haven't had too many kids who have read it since December because they've all been
On holidays.
busy.
Yeah.
But
What I get from this is that it's reminiscent of a lot of books that I read as a kid,
yes,
which I like. It's kind of there's a bit of nostalgia about there and a bit of a feeling of a different, maybe a slower life and a different childhood, which I
Okay.
think is what might be appealing to kids
okay,
rather than the fast-paced.
yes,
Some of the books are very much about fast-paced adventures and Spy Kids and things like that.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
In terms of, so you did this as hardcover as well as softcover.
I did.
Have you had any feedback from people, what they prefer, or do you think it's just?
At the book launch, some people came up and wanted a hardcover
Yeah.
because some people really like to collect books. And I think they enjoy having a hardcover, but because the soft cover was not quite as expensive, I think a lot of people probably preferred the soft cover.
Yeah, so I guess it's a choice. At least you have a choice.
Yes.
And as a
Mm.
gift, I think a hardcover is always really nice. Because
Yes.
it feels more substantial.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'd have to say that I really personally love the cover. I just love the colours
Yeah,
in it.
the colours have come up
Yep.
really well.
Yep.
And I am always a stand by the quality of the print on demand books.
Well, it's always getting better, and
Yeah.
Mm.
they're always adding more options.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You are in a writing group,
Yes.
aren't you? Yeah.
Actually, I think I started way back before you had this business,
Yes.
and I asked you if you'd write my first book, and you was, I'm not sure about that.
Yes, you
And
would have
you-
been one of our first
yeah.
clients, yeah.
You did that at home
Yes.
before you moved into
Yeah.
this lovely place here.
What year? I can't remember now. What year
I
it
think
was.
that was around 2012, but I think I started
Yes.
in a writing group at the library, and you were running that group,
Yes.
and you were the one that got me to write about Curly O'Callaghan, which is my main character,
Oh, great.
who's worked all the way through. Because you asked us to write about, because we always have a topic at a writing group, you asked us to write about an earthquake in Tokyo, Japan.
Oh,
because
that's right.
it was the
It
year
was
of
around
that
time.
happened.
Yeah.
And I thought, how in the hell am I going to write a story like that? Because I've never been to Japan, I've never been in an earthquake, touch wood. And so I decided, and it was all about the loony cartoon who has the curly in his, with the big nose.
Yeah.
And after I finished that story, one of my dear friends who still writes today said to me, why don't you use that character for all your stories? But I've been in writing groups for ever since I did my first writing course. I went on from there with the people in that course, and I've followed on and done.
So it must be coming up to around 10 years or so now.
It would be.
So the other people in that group done, have they published books?
There's not actually many of them that publish books, and I find that surprising in a writing group because I think a lot of people tend to write short stories, and they don't sit down and write, and they can't seem to write a whole story for some reason. So that there's a few people with.
So what you're saying is they're just bums.
That's right.
So you're like a star student.
I think you know, maybe they need to send off. Sometimes it's good to send off your short stories to competitions and anthologies and what have you.
Yes.
In order to try and get it published, and then if you get it published, that kind of helps with your confidence. Would you say that, Les? You know, it sort of gives you a reason to finish a book as well.
You should just finish anyway.
Yeah. And
Regardless of the
this
outcome.
is the beauty. This is, to me, one of the biggest advantages of self-publishing is that you can put a collection of your own short stories into something.
That is so true.
Yeah, and it's satisfying, isn't it?
Well, I noticed you have Carmel Bird providing a puff.
Carmel Bird, I was just saying to Kev before that I woke up this morning thinking there were 3 birds in my life. There was Carmel Bird, who put a blurb on the back, and I didn't think she'd do that, but I actually saw her in my very early days of writing, and I found her inspirational to listen to, and so then I put a ladybird in that book as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
And there's a ladybird in the other book.
Yes.
And then, you know, with Busybird printing, publishing, it's just, you know, a bit ironic that there's always birds coming around.
I can actually remember when you were doing this first book,
Yes.
I was encouraging you to get someone to write a puff piece. So a puff piece, that little thing by another author is called a puff piece.
Yes.
I remember you saying, oh, I'd love one from Carmel Bird, and I said, well, you don't know unless you ask.
That's
And I
right.
seem to remember she responded very quickly to you.
She
with something.
She
And
did.
so you don't know, do you, unless you actually put it out there.
You should always ask.
Yeah.
Blaise. Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
And I mean, Carmel Bird, for those people that don't know, is a really, you know, respected author.
She is in Australia.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. So I was pretty pleased with all that.
Yeah. So in terms of being a writing group, would you say it has helped your writing?
Oh, tremendously.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would tell everybody to
Yeah.
go into a workshopping group. Most people are very respectful, and some.
Tell us the juicy.
Yeah, but some people, if you do make a suggestion for an improvement, or you think it might be an improvement, initially they get a little bit upset because writing's their baby.
Yeah, we're all very thin-skinned.
But they go away and think about it,
Yeah.
and then they come back, and I think they improve tremendously if
Yeah.
they do listen to it. Because say if you've got 12 people in a writing group, you're getting all of their opinions.
Yeah.
And if people agree in the writing group that something you've written or something could be improved, well, you know, there's the numbers and the proof in the numbers.
Yeah,
So you should take that on board, I think.
definitely. You
Yeah.
have the rule, don't you, Les? If at least 3 people say at least 2 people say the same thing about your work,
Yes.
about an aspect of your work, then you should take notice of it.
Yep.
Because one opinion is just one opinion.
It is. And you know, people are not always right. We're all only amateurs at this, and we're still learning all the way through.
At the end of the day, though, we're all readers and we all like different things. You know, you can have 10 people read the same book and get all different opinions because it's subjective, isn't it?
It is. It's
Yeah.
like art, isn't it? Yes.
But
Yeah.
you want the majority to like it.
Well,
You
yeah.
don't want just one, you know, say out of 10 people, you don't want just one person to like it. You would like at least, 7 or 8, wouldn't you?
Definitely, Blaise. Yes. But it's been a joy to me. It's changed my life, writing, because I mean, I didn't take it up until I was a senior.
Yeah.
Actually, I was 60, and that's actually a good time to take up writing because you've got plenty of time
Yeah.
to work on it, whereas when you're young you haven't, unless you're in the trade. But I just think it's changed me in so many respects. I've got so many friends that I've made, and also once I wouldn't have been able to sit here and talk.
I think
really,
your confidence levels have changed dramatically as well.
my confidence. I couldn't read a story if I wrote it, and
Yeah.
a lot of people come along and can't do that because you feel too self-conscious. Oh, this story's not good enough. It's not up to the standard, and I'm a bit shy about reading it. And now it doesn't worry me at all. So
That's good.
I think, you know, you can still keep growing even though that you're 60 years old. You can still
Yeah.
keep growing
Yeah,
in your
learning.
own.
Yep,
Yeah, look.
I'm
definitely.
still growing.
I've noticed that, Liz.
It's just fat. So you're a big advocate for getting in front of people and reading.
I'm not.
You are. You are now, though.
You are.
Well, when I say I can do it now,
Yeah.
I
You don't like
I
it.
still feel self-conscious,
Yeah.
but I force myself now to do these things because I think you've got to if you're a writer. And this is what people forget, that don't go out and join writing groups. It's a very solitary occupation, actually doing the writing itself. And if you can't read out your story or talk to other people about it, you're not going to be able to market your book. Or
No.
No.
Yeah, you have to be able to tell people about it.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We have a Sandra Kenny who says, "Well done."
Ooh.
Thanks, I haven't done anything though.
Thanks, Sandra.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Jenny.
I know that's Jenny.
Yeah. She's reading something at the next Open Mic Night. It's going to be
Yes,
compelling.
Open Mic Night starts up again next
February.
month.
Yep.
Okay.
So, Colleen, have you got another book in the works?
I've
Or are you
always
the
got
rest?
I've always got another book in my mind, yes, and because I have been writing with writing groups for so long, I've got folders and folders with short stories and poems even.
So you can do another little collection there.
Yeah, I could have quite easily have a collection, and
Yeah.
that might even be more interesting to people than reading a whole book, because some people struggle to read an entire book. So it'll either be that, or I've got a story that I started many long years ago that I've never really gone on with, and that's got murder and everything in it. So that'll be completely different
Like a thriller.
from these. Yeah,
Oh,
a thriller.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's great.
I've got to live to 100 to do all this. That's the only thing.
Wow, it's better than.
Well, if you don't live to 100, you're just not committed enough.
No.
Well, you could be out playing bingo.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is to me a more interesting way to spend your retirement.
Well, I think so, Blaise.
I mean, you could do
And-
bingo as well, but
Oh, so you just
all the time
bang and
pokies.
bingo. God.
And I consider, like when you do get your book published, it costs you a little bit of money. You expect that because you get a really good job done. But you look at it like anything, playing golf, or you're spending money whatever you do. So
That's true. I never thought of that. That's a good
yeah.
selling point.
yeah, so I always think it's money well spent.
Yeah, and it's satisfying to see it in print, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's fabulous to have that book in your hand.
I can actually remember you, Colleen, for your first book, at your first launch. You were a bit iffy about having a launch, I remember.
was.
And
Yes.
I encouraged you. And I
Yes,
said,
you
if you
did.
don't want to call it a launch, call it something else. I can't remember what you ended up doing. But
Yes.
you had, I don't know, 80 or so people at your launch. It was
Yes.
quite a lot at Eltham Library.
Yes.
And I'll never forget you sitting at the table with your stack of books, with this queue for people to sign the book.
It was one of the most wonderful days in my life.
Yeah.
That first book launch.
Yeah.
And a
And now
friend,
you're an old hand at it.
well, not really, but a friend of mine often remarks that's the happiest I've ever seen you is that day, and I
Yeah.
really did feel very happy. Yes. Yes.
That's
So it gives you a real buzz
Mm.
to be able to produce a book.
Yeah. And now you have a legacy for your children and grandchildren to
I
leave
do.
behind. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your family and your grandchildren may not always appreciate when
What
you
you're
first
doing.
write a book, but I think as they grow older and you know, maybe in generations to come. It's always good to have a memoir, which I've got, but I haven't printed that for the public. But it's good to have a memoir because I see a lot of people doing, is it genealogy?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think they can only get the dates and
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
just facts and figures.
facts and figures. And I think if you leave a book about your life, which isn't all that great, you know, but they get to know what sort of a person.
Yes.
If I'm someone's great grandmother in the future, they'll get to know what made me tick
Yeah.
because it's in my memoir.
And especially, you know, say your grandchildren who only know you as grandma, they
Yes.
only sort of see you as a certain person.
That's right.
When they're adults, they might be able to read what you've written and see you from a different angle.
That's what I was starting it to say, and then I got a bit
That's
sidetracked.
okay.
But yes, that's what I was
Yeah.
starting
The
to
other thing
say.
too is the way of life also changes. So
True.
Yes,
the
yes.
grandchildren, when they're in their 40s, 50s, they'll be living in a totally different world to what we have now. I mean, I recall we had an intern a little while ago, years ago, and she asked what mobile phones are like when I was a teenager. Mobile phones didn't sort of really come in until the 90s, and they weren't, you know, common appliance
Yeah, it was
until the early
really, I
2000s.
think my first phone was 98, and even then it was a big deal to get
Yes.
one.
When you look at all the changes in society in terms of, you know, you have streaming, you have internet, you have mobile phones, all these things are really coming out. Mobile phone, like an iPhone, is much more powerful than a home computer than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So everything's changing. So with a memoir, people get to read about the way of life.
Yes.
Yes,
It's
it's
fake.
actually it's important for your family, but even the social history of this era.
Yes.
It's really important that we actually record it.
And there's other stuff that happens. I mean, look at the fires now, you know, so people 20 years from now might look back and think, oh, you know, what a horrible time that must have been.
That's true.
Providing they do something about it, doesn't happen again. But
Yes, yes.
All right, so thank you so much for coming in today. It's been really good to have a chat with you.
Thank you for asking me,
Yeah.
Blaise. I was sort of blown away. That's an up-to-date term.
Was it too scary, was it?
No, it wasn't scary at all, actually. I didn't need my relaxing tablet.
Oh, didn't you?
so
A
we
bit of
can
Valium or something.
put the bottle of gin away.
No, Les, don't tell everyone about that.
So before we finish up, we're just going to tell people a little bit about what's happening at Busybird.
Yes, okay.
What's happening is always something happening here. Our pitch to publish competition is on, and I think Bill's going to enter his novel.
Well, you may do.
in May. So that is where someone can win help with the writing of the book, but also a publishing package. So that is open until the 10th of February.
2021.
No, this year.
Okay.
And so you can either come into Busybird and get a entry form, or you can go onto our website. What else is happening? Next week we have a 3-hour workshop on how to write a business book, and lots of other workshops are coming up. What else? Open mic night starts next month,
It's February.
I might even come along again.
That would be good.
Yeah.
One of your authors is on Triple R this afternoon.
Oh, Les is on.
Oh, Les.
Les Zig.
Not Les Zig.
Or Lazarus Zigmanus.
They're all three
Lazarus
different people.
Zigmanus. You're going to be talking about
I don't know what I'm
Berlin?
talking. So I'm not talking to Lazarus.
Oh, okay. Lazarus, one of our authors, is going to be on the radio this afternoon, and we might put that up in the comments under this video. Is that at 12?
Oh, you have to ask Lazarus, but I think it is. It's not easy being free people.
It's not.
Or really.
You can get drugs for that.
I'm already on drugs.
Okay, so thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.
So, yeah.
Bye.
Bye.